Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought you were making a simple decision, only to have it completely change everything around you? That's exactly what happened to me. It all started on a quiet, rainy evening when I found myself in a situation I never imagined I'd be in. My stepdad, someone I'd always seen as just family, suddenly became a part of my life in a way I wasn't ready for. You might be thinking, how could that even happen? Well, that's exactly what I want to share with you today. It began with a small misunderstanding, something innocent that slowly escalated into something much more complicated. My house was empty. The night was unusually still, and circumstances pushed me into a choice I never thought I'd make. I agreed to share a bed with him. At first, it felt awkward, like trying to balance on a tightrope, careful not to let anything slip. But the moment I thought I had everything under control, something unexpected happened, something that neither of us anticipated. And that's when everything changed. I know this sounds shocking, and maybe even uncomfortable, but I want you to really think about this with me. Have you ever been forced to confront feelings you didn't expect to have, especially towards someone so close to you? It's confusing, it's thrilling, and at the same time, it's terrifying. And that tension is exactly what kept me awake that night, questioning every thought, every action, every little gesture. The thing about moments like this is that they test the lines between family, trust, and temptation. They make you question what is right, what is wrong, and sometimes, what you even feel in your own heart. And as this story unfolded, I realized that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. My stepdad, a man I thought I knew completely, suddenly revealed sides of himself that I had never seen before. And me? I was left grappling with emotions I wasn't prepared to handle, emotions that were growing stronger with every passing second. Before I go any further, I want you to pause for a moment and imagine yourself in my shoes. Would you have made the same choice? Could you have resisted, or would curiosity, and maybe something deeper, have pulled you in the same direction? I want to hear what you think, so make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, I'll be asking you some questions along the way that might change the way you see the story entirely. By the end of this night, nothing would remain the same. Something happened that neither of us could predict, and it left us both in shock, trying to figure out what came next. And that's where I'll leave you for now, on the edge of a secret that I wasn't sure how to deal with, a moment that changed everything, and a question that I still can't answer. What would you do if you were in my place? Looking back, I realized that the night didn't just happen out of nowhere. There were so many little moments leading up to it that I'd ignored, moments that now feel like warnings I should have paid attention to. My stepdad had always been a kind, protective figure in my life, the type of man who made you feel safe even when the world outside was chaotic. But lately, there was something different in the way he looked at me, something I couldn't quite place. I kept telling myself it was just my imagination, that I was reading too much into harmless gestures. Life had been complicated already. My parents' separation left a lingering tension in the house, and I often found myself seeking comfort in the people around me. My stepdad, for all his flaws and the awkwardness that sometimes came with being in blended families, was the one person I felt I could rely on. He was dependable, confident, and there was a warmth to him that was impossible to ignore. And as strange as it felt to admit, a part of me was curious about this new dynamic, about the unspoken connection that seemed to grow stronger with every day. That evening, as I prepared for bed, the tension was already there. The house was quiet, my mom had gone to visit a friend, and I was left alone with him in the living room. We started talking about small things at first, movies, old family memories, jokes we used to laugh at. But gradually, the conversation turned more personal. He shared thoughts I had never heard before, things about his life, regrets he carried, and fears he kept hidden. I found myself listening intently, drawn into his words, feeling a closeness that was new and confusing. Every glance lingered longer than it should have. Every laugh felt like it had an extra weight behind it. I could feel my heart racing as he finally suggested that we might sleep in the same room since the guest bedroom had a broken heater and it was freezing cold. At first, I hesitated, reminding myself of the boundaries that should exist, the line that should never be crossed. But there was something about his tone, something gentle yet persuasive, that made it hard to say no. And when I agreed, a mix of anxiety and anticipation churned inside me. It wasn't just the physical closeness, it was the emotional tension that was unbearable, a feeling I had never experienced with him before. As we climbed into the bed, the room was filled with the quiet hum of the night. The storm outside added a rhythmic backdrop to the silent energy between us. Every small movement, every shift in position, made my mind race with questions I didn't want to answer. Was this just coincidence, or was it something more? Was he feeling it too, or was it all in my imagination? I wanted to tell myself to stay calm, to keep it purely platonic, but the truth was, it was nearly impossible. There was a magnetic pull I couldn't explain, and every second made it stronger. Even now, as I think back, I can feel the tension, the unspoken thoughts that hung between us, and the curiosity that refused to be ignored. Something was about to happen, something neither of us could have predicted, and it was just a matter of time before the night revealed more than either of us was ready for. And that's when I realized this story wasn't just about one moment. It was about all the hidden emotions, all the secrets that people carry, and the way life can suddenly blur the lines between love, trust, and temptation. The hours passed slowly, and every time I thought I could relax, the quiet around us seemed to make everything feel heavier. I kept stealing glances at him, noticing things I had never paid attention to before, the way his hand rested near mine, the subtle rise and fall of his chest as he breathed, the warmth that radiated from him. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew there was something real simmering beneath the surface, something neither of us had acknowledged out loud. At the same time, my mind kept replaying moments from earlier in the day. He had been unusually attentive, asking questions about my life, my work, even the little things I often kept to myself. It wasn't overbearing, but it was persistent in a way that made me feel seen and, strangely, desired. I couldn't help wondering, was he aware of the tension building between us, or was it something I alone was feeling? It was a question that haunted me, leaving me both anxious and intrigued. And then there was the other side of the story, the part one couldn't ignore. My stepdad had always been a complicated man, someone who carried a past with him. I had overheard snippets of conversations, bits of regrets he had shared with my mom or in moments when I thought no one was listening. He had his own struggles, his own vulnerabilities, and in a strange way, that made me feel closer to him. It made the tension between us feel almost inevitable, like two people drawn together by something neither of us fully understood. As the night wore on, I found myself drifting between moments of panic and curiosity. I kept thinking about what would happen if either of us gave in to the feelings building between us. Would it ruin everything? Or could it reveal something hidden that we had both been avoiding? I couldn't shake the thought that even the smallest touch, the slightest glance, could tip the balance in ways I wasn't ready for. And yet, part of me was secretly hoping it would. Meanwhile, my thoughts kept circling back to the bigger picture. How would my mom react if she ever knew? How would the rest of the family see him or me? The consequences of any action loomed large, making every movement feel loaded with risk. But despite all that, the emotional pull between us only grew stronger. It was impossible to ignore, and it kept me on edge, wondering how the night would end, or if it would end at all. I also started noticing his own hesitations, subtle signs that he too was aware of the tension. The way he shifted slightly in his sleep, the occasional sigh, the moments when our hands brushed without meaning to. It was almost like we were both trying to navigate a delicate line, testing boundaries we knew we shouldn't cross, but couldn't entirely resist. And that made every second feel electric, every glance a question, every silence a possibility. As I lay there, wide awake, I realized that the night wasn't just about the physical closeness, it was about emotions we hadn't named yet, about desires and doubts that had been simmering for a long time. And as much as I tried to push them away, I couldn't. I kept thinking about what might happen next, and I can't help but ask you, what would you do if you were in my position? The room felt smaller as the night grew deeper, as if the walls themselves were closing in on us. Every small sound, the rain tapping against the window, the soft creak of the floorboards, even the faint hum of the heater, suddenly felt magnified. I could feel his presence beside me more acutely than ever, and every slight movement made my heart race. It was as though the air between us had become charged, thick with anticipation, and neither of us could look away. I tried to focus on anything else, the book I had brought, the faint glow of my phone, but my attention kept drifting back to him. There was a softness in his gaze now, a kind of vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. At the same time, there was tension, a subtle struggle he seemed to be holding back, like he was aware of the boundaries, but unsure if he wanted to respect them. I couldn't stop thinking, what was going through his mind? Was he feeling the same pull, the same mix of fear and desire that kept me awake? Then came the quiet moments that made everything unbearable. The way our hands would almost touch when we shifted in the bed, the way a shoulder brushed against mine, the way our eyes met briefly before we quickly looked away. Each time it happened, it left me both exhilarated and terrified. I realized that the night was no longer about comfort or staying warm. It had become a test, a silent push and pull between restraint and surrender. I kept thinking about the consequences of what could happen if either of us gave in. What would it mean for our family, for the trust that had always existed between us? And yet, there was something magnetic about the way we were drawn to each other, something that felt impossible to ignore. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I didn't fully understand, a precipice where one wrong step could change everything. Every passing minute made the tension worse. I could sense his hesitation, the subtle signs of his inner conflict, and it only heightened my own anxiety. The storm outside seemed to echo the storm inside, the uncertainty, the longing, the curiosity that neither of us dared to voice. I kept telling myself to pull back, to remind him and myself of the lines we couldn't cross. But even as I did, a small part of me wondered, what would happen if we didn't? And just when I thought I could finally settle, the air shifted. A sudden movement, a whisper, something almost imperceptible, made me freeze. I realized we were both on the brink, teetering between control and something far more dangerous, and there was no turning back now. I couldn't predict what was going to happen next, and the suspense was almost unbearable. I have to ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you stop, or would you let curiosity and desire take over? The next moments could change everything, and I'm still not sure how it will end. Just when I thought the night couldn't feel any more intense, something unexpected happened, something that threw everything into chaos. The room, the tension, the unspoken emotions between us, it all shifted in an instant. I had been trying to make sense of my own feelings, trying to navigate the magnetic pull toward him, when suddenly he froze. His eyes widened slightly, and a look of confusion mixed with something else, something I couldn't immediately identify, flashed across his face. My heart skipped a beat as I realized that he, too, was feeling the weight of this moment more than either of us had anticipated. Then came the sound that made my stomach drop, the faint buzz of a phone on the nightstand. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed impossible to ignore. He reached for it, and I caught a glimpse of the screen, a message from someone I didn't recognize. I didn't see the full message, but the way his hand trembled slightly as he read it made my chest tighten. It was as if a hidden world I had never known about him had suddenly collided with the fragile, intense bubble we were in. Questions raced through my mind. Who was it? Why was he shaking? And more importantly, how would this affect what was happening between us? For a moment, the charged atmosphere between us became tangled with uncertainty. The warmth, the tension, the curiosity, it all remained, but now it was layered with fear. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the way he looked at me as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. That pause, that silence, was almost unbearable. I wanted to break it, to ask him, to understand, but I knew even one wrong word could ruin everything. As he put the phone down, he tried to focus back on me, but the change in his demeanor was impossible to ignore. His touch, once reassuring, now felt almost fragile. Every glance carried a new weight. Every small movement hinted at secrets I didn't yet understand. It was like standing on a tightrope with the wind suddenly picking up, threatening to throw us both off balance. And the more I tried to interpret his actions, the deeper the suspense grew. At the same time, my own emotions were spiraling. I was torn between curiosity and caution, desire and doubt. I could feel the connection between us, undeniable and electric, yet I knew there was now another layer, an unknown element that could change everything in a single moment. The story that had seemed like a private, intimate night was no longer just about me and him. It was about secrets, about choices, and about whether the intensity we felt could survive the unexpected complications that had suddenly appeared. I kept wondering, what would you do if you were in this situation? Would you confront the unknown immediately, or would you let the tension build even further, testing the limits of trust and desire? It's a question I struggled with as the night stretched on, each second pulling us closer to a point of no return. Every whispered word, every brush of skin, felt amplified now, charged with suspense and uncertainty, and I realized that the next move, either his or mine, could change everything. By the time the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, the tension was almost unbearable. I could feel it in every glance, every hesitation, every heartbeat. And just when I thought I might finally have a moment to breathe, I realized that nothing would be the same again. Something had shifted, a new layer of conflict and mystery had been introduced, and I was left standing at the edge, wondering how we could possibly navigate what was coming next. The tension that had been building all night finally reached its breaking point. I could feel it in every heartbeat, every breath, every lingering glance between us. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside the room, both wild and unpredictable. I knew that whatever happened next would change everything, our relationship, our trust, and the fragile balance of emotions we had been dancing around for hours. He finally turned toward me fully, eyes searching mine, as if trying to communicate everything without words. There was a raw honesty in that moment, a vulnerability I had never seen before. I realized that he wasn't just wrestling with his own feelings, he was trying to navigate mine too. And for the first time that night, the walls we had both built began to crumble. The unspoken tension gave way to a moment of clarity, a quiet understanding that despite all the complications, what we were feeling was real, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. I reached out slowly, our hands brushing, a touch that sent shivers through both of us. The hesitation was there, yes, but it was mingled with trust and an unspoken promise. In that instant, everything else, the fears, the doubts, the past mistakes, faded into the background. All that mattered was the connection we had discovered, the fragile thread of intimacy and honesty that held us together. It was a climax not of chaos, but of understanding, of admitting that feelings, even complicated ones, could not be ignored forever. Just as I thought the intensity of the night had reached its peak, a new layer of surprise arrived. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message that made both of us pause. But instead of fear or guilt, the message revealed something unexpected, a piece of information that neither of us could have anticipated. It was a reminder that life, even at its most intimate, could still throw in a twist, keeping us on edge and reminding us that nothing is ever truly predictable. We sat there, side by side, breathing heavily, realizing that the night had changed us in ways we hadn't anticipated. The main conflict, the tension, the curiosity, the forbidden feelings, had reached its resolution. We had acknowledged the truth between us and, in doing so, had found a strange, unexpected clarity. Yet, even with the resolution, the twist reminded us that life doesn't end neatly. It evolves, surprises, and tests us in ways we cannot foresee. Even after the twist, the room finally settled into a quiet calm. The storm outside had passed, leaving behind the soft glow of morning light filtering through the curtains. For the first time that night, I felt a sense of clarity. Everything that had happened, the tension, the unspoken desires, the unexpected messages, had led to this moment. We had faced the emotions we could no longer ignore, and in doing so, had gained a deeper understanding of ourselves and each other. We spent the next few moments talking, cautiously at first, sharing thoughts we hadn't dared to express before. The conversation was awkward, yes, but it was honest. We acknowledged the boundaries that existed, the risks that came with crossing them, and yet, we also admitted the connection that had quietly developed between us. It wasn't about acting recklessly, it was about recognizing truth and human emotions. And that honesty created a strange comfort, a sense that no matter how complicated life got, clarity could emerge from even the most unexpected situations. As the morning light grew brighter, I realized that the night had changed everything, but it hadn't destroyed anything. The tension had been resolved, the secret feelings had been acknowledged, and yet there was room for growth, understanding, and healing. It was a reminder that relationships, no matter how complicated, require honesty, courage, and the willingness to confront emotions rather than ignore them. We didn't have all the answers, and life would continue to throw challenges our way, but we had taken the first step toward navigating them together. I hope, as you reflect on this story, you think about the moments in your own life where emotions and relationships became complicated, and how honesty and communication could change everything. Could you have handled the situation differently? Would you have recognized the signs earlier, or waited until the moment forced you to face your feelings? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments how you feel about the ending, or if you'd like to see a sequel exploring what happens next. In the end, life isn't about perfection. It's about navigating the unexpected, understanding your emotions, and making choices that reflect both who you are and who you want to become. And while this story is about a night that tested boundaries and revealed hidden feelings, it's also a story about growth, trust, and the complexity of human relationships. Summary: and I agreed to share a bed with my stepdad, and something unexpected happened, a true infidelity story. A quiet evening turns into a night full of tension, curiosity, and unspoken emotions. As boundaries are tested and secrets are revealed, the story explores complex relationships, trust, and the fine line between temptation and honesty. Through twists and suspense, the characters navigate their feelings, leading to a resolution that is both reflective and thought-provoking. 5.